Hello and good morning. You're tuning into Astro AWANI with me, Nabila Khalida. Right now, we're about to discuss on a hot topic that has been widely discussed across all channels and media, which is about our local aerospace industry. And Malaysia Airlines, particularly a carrier with a history marked by tragedy and turbulence, is once again under the spotlight. Based on the statement, Malaysia Aviation Group MAG is offering discounts of up to 30% on airfares for both economy and business class on all Malaysia Airlines flights and all seats on Firefly, and these exclusive offers is available from September 5th to 16, 2024 on the airline's online platforms for immediate travel until August 31st, 2025. And the aviation group said this as it announced it has been appointed the official airline partner and premier sponsor of Mata Fair 2024, Malaysia's largest international travel fair that will take place from September 6 to 8 this year at the Malaysia International Trade and Exhibition Centre, MITAC. Hence, we want to delve into the impact moving forward. So to discuss further, joining me on the line right now is Brandon Sobey, the independent aviation analyst. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, Brandon, firstly, what's your take on the first reaction on this announcement made by MAG? Do you think this fair strategy is sustainable given their limited capacity in the market?
Well, it's a little bit surprising just because they have so little capacity in the market for the rest of the year, particularly September, October, November, where they've been cutting capacity 20% overall, and I believe it's like 30% in the domestic market. And you have very low fares being offered in the domestic market for these months now. In fact, looking at some of the fares that are available even for later this month or for October in the domestic market are quite aggressive, quite low fares. And generally, we've been seeing higher fares in the market, in the domestic market, particularly after the capacity cuts last week. But I would say there is, with this travel fair, every year you always see promotions. You always see Malaysia Airlines, trying to stimulate demand and offering specials in conjunction with this travel fair. So from that perspective, it's not unusual. And of course, over the course of the year, Malaysia Airlines often has promotions, as do the other airlines in Malaysia. AirAsia and Batik, they promote in different ways, or they promote at different times, but they do have promotions for fairs like this or for other events. So or this particular promotions they always happen in the market. It's just a little bit surprising, I would say, this time because Malaysia Airlines really doesn't have very much capacity in the market, particularly in the next few months. And generally, we are seeing higher fares rather than lower fares during this period.
But do help us understand better, what might be the underlying reasons for the MAG's decision to drastically lower fares despite not having excess capacity? And could this suggest internal pressures or perhaps broader market competition?
I wouldn't say it's because of competition, because again, like I was saying, the fares have been going up, if anything, particularly in the domestic market, but also to some extent in the international market. So this is not about matching competitors. In fact, this is the opposite. Competitor fares have been on the rise in the last week or so. So I think there's a couple of things that could be going on here. One is they really want to kind of win back customers and get some attention, given all the negative publicity that they've had to endure the last week and a half since this crisis began with their operational issues, or even before that with all the incidences that they had. So they might be seeing this as an opportunity to kind of get some attention, get some publicity, even though they don't necessarily need to reduce fares so much at this point, given the capacity in the market. So it could be a driver. Also, I must say that there is some political element to this usually. Certainly, the politicians and the ministers, they don't like when fares go up, particularly domestic fares. So there could be some pressure politically to reduce fares. But if you are a consumer, particularly in the domestic Malaysian market, I would strongly urge you to buy these fares now, because they're available this weekend. And I do expect, once this promotion's over, that we'll see higher fares for the rest of the year in the market because of the capacity constraints. For next year, I think, as capacity comes back, as Malaysia Airlines comes back with their capacity after this 3-month kind of reduction, then that'll be a bit of a different story. So you can buy very cheap fares for next year as well right now, which is, will also maybe a good thing to do because fares will go up as we get closer to next year. But I think particularly for September, October, November, consumers should expect higher fares. So this is a good opportunity to buy these fares before they go back up during this period of capacity cuts.
And I'll be definitely one of the first person to actually grab the promo and discounts. But lowering the fare rates is one thing, but another aggressive actions that have been taken by them is by adding routes and capacity. Yet this has been reportedly put operational pressure on them. So what are the potential risks of expanding too quickly without matching operational capabilities? Brendan.
Yeah, so I mean, over the last year, they've added back capacity in the market, and they've added a lot of destinations. So if you look at their capacity, overall capacity, both domestic and international as a group, just in the last couple of months, they're back to pre-COVID, and a lot of this capacity has come back during the course of this year. And at the same time, they've expanded the network. Just recently, they added a few routes. International routes, Malé, Chiang Mai, and Da Nang, 3 regional routes. And earlier, they added a few routes in India. If you look at their overall international network, they have 10 more destinations than they had in 2019 prior to the pandemic. And this expansion, in hindsight, may have been a little bit too much, just because because of the delivery delays, supply constraints, part issues, and manpower issues, and so forth that they've been experiencing. They ended up with too much capacity, particularly in recent weeks. So I believe there was a little bit of a misalignment maybe between operations and commercial here. Unfortunately, commercial was pushing for more capacity and for routes. Operations really wasn't able to actually meet that. It is very difficult to plan because the delivery delays, even though they've been happening for 2 years, sometimes additional delays happen at the last second. But still, I think they were a bit too aggressive, and they should have been a bit more conservative in hindsight. And going forward, I mean, again, for the next 3 months, they're reducing capacity, so that's not an issue. But going into next year, where they're going to be planning to add capacity again and add routes, they have to be careful that this doesn't happen again.
So in your opinion, you said that it was too much. So do you think that it would have been more prudent for Malaysia Airlines to actually stabilize operations before adding new routes and capacity instead? And how could this strategy affect their future growth?
Yeah, I mean, again, like what I just said, in hindsight, but hindsight is everything. It's really hard for me to sit here and criticize too much because, even though there was issues for the last 2 years with the fleet and with MRO and with manpower, they got worse, and it's not so easy to predict these things necessarily. But in hindsight, it would have been better to not add so much capacity and not expand the network. Commercial team obviously wanted to do that, but I think operations, they should have been noticing what was happening on the operations side more. Operations was already struggling. As I said in the interview yesterday, the on-time performance, was low, 73%, 72 or 73% last year. The first 7 months of this year even slipped a bit more into, again, just a little bit above 70%. Particularly bad in the month of July. But I mean, the situation was not getting better. But despite that, they added capacity and added routes. And now we're in the situation where they basically had to cut capacity because one could say they may have overscheduled, over expanded in terms of capacity and routes. How can it affect their future strategy? Well, that remains to be seen. I hope commercial becomes better aligned with operations now. I hope they can have a big relook at their commercial strategy and have a relook at how that is aligned with operations, and to make sure that this doesn't happen again. But they are optimistic by early next year they will be out of the current crisis and capacity will be back. So they're doing their budget and planning for next year now. So I think it remains to be seen how much this current crisis will affect their plans for next year. I would think it would to some extent, but it's too early to know for sure.
Brendan, we have about 2 minutes left before we go for a short break. But given that all these commercial decisions made in the past year, like fare discounts, new routes and capacity expansion, how would you assess the overall commercial direction of Malaysia Airlines? And what key missteps or successes in their commercial strategy that stands out to you over the last year? And what lessons can other airlines learn from the experience?
Yeah, so I mean, we kind of already were talking about this. I think Malaysia Airlines, the commercial direction, which not many people have talked about in recent weeks. A lot of the focus has been on the operations and the issues there, understandably, given what has happened and the need to cut capacity and stabilize the operation. But the commercial direction was, as I was mentioning, was to add capacity and add several routes. Again, they're in the international market, they're up 10 destinations compared to pre-COVID. In the domestic market, the number of destinations is pretty much the same, but they have 10 more jet routes than they did pre-COVID, as well as Firefly has added a lot of, particularly Firefly has added point-to-point domestic. So and then from the other standpoint, you look at like airfares and the strategy for Malaysia Airlines, as unveiled, in their current strategy that was, completed. Well, it was completed just before COVID, but then there was more implemented after COVID. Their strategy is to be a premium carrier, and they also have a lot of strategy around being kind of becoming more of a travel company with other ancillary businesses. But if you look at where their airfares were and what they were doing in terms of very aggressive kind of commercial and network expansion in terms of number of routes, number of destinations, amount of capacity compared to the competitors, it wasn't necessarily following that kind of premium carrier conservative strategy that you would think they would have based on their actual overall strategy. So I think there was a misalignment with commercial if you compare it to their overall strategy, and then I was talking about the misalignment between commercial and operations. So again, not much focus on this in the recent weeks, but I think as they take a look back at what has happened here in the last year or even 2 years since the borders reopened, and look at what is going to happen going forward, I think they need to kind of reassess this commercial strategy so that it's aligned with their overall strategy, and that it's and that that they don't overexpand again, given the implications on operations. And other airlines can surely learn from this as well. But every airline has its own strategy. So I would say that this is more particularly specific on Malaysia Airlines Group.
And definitely we have to realign the commercial strategy, especially for the aerospace industry. So we have a lot more to be unpacked and to be discussed. So we go for a short break. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back, and we're still looking at the Malaysia's Airlines strategic moves under scrutiny with Brendan Sobey, the independent aviation analyst, joining me on the line. So Brendan, moving on, we know that there will be a special press conference from MAG tomorrow, which is led by Datuk Captain Nizam Ismail, Group Managing Director of MAG. So in conjunction to that, do you think that we will have more updates on what's currently happening right now?
Well, I think this is an opportunity for Malaysia Airlines Group to come out and say more on the business and what has happened, because there hasn't been any press conferences, just a couple of statements since the operational crisis began, almost 2 weeks ago now. And I mean, this is a part of the MATA event. You were mentioning at the beginning, that the sale that they announced today related to the MATA event, which starts tomorrow, which is one of the biggest trade fairs of the year in terms of travel, and Malaysia Airlines has a big presence at this event every year. So, and they usually have some kind of press event as well. So it's not I think it's not special in that they have this every year for MATA, but I think it's obviously special given the timing, and particularly given that they've been kind of quiet, these last couple of weeks. So this is their opportunity to come out and say something, and they do have an announcement planned for tomorrow. Generally, at this event, they announce new routes, and at other trade fairs, they also generally announce new routes, or sometimes they also announce new products, like if they have new seats or coming out, or on new aircraft, that kind of thing. But new routes is their normal new announcement. And Mavcom just approved Malaysia Airlines application for Paris service. It could be the application was for daily service starting as early as February next year. So it's possible that tomorrow they will be announcing Paris, which will become their second long-haul route after London. Quite interesting timing to be announcing new routes, given their issues. We were just talking about before the break about how they kind of expanded quite a lot in recent months, adding several destinations, in regional destinations, primarily Southeast Asia and India, and as well as capacity, and that kind of made it difficult and put pressure on their operations, which partially, along with many other factors, contributed to the situation that they have now. So a little bit of an interesting timing, or to be announcing a new route. But having said that, again, at MATA events, that's what they normally do. And I think something like this was probably planned for some time, and they want to go forward with it, and they want to come out and have, try to improve their PR and come out with some positive publicity after the last 2 weeks. So I'm not sure that they will announce Paris, but that was just approved by Mavcom, so that would be one possibility. As long as other possible routes they've been looking at, resuming Brisbane, for example, another route that was also recently approved by Mavcom, so that's another possibility, or a combination of routes. Sometimes they use these events to launch not just one, but 2 or 3 routes. So we'll see what happens, but I think new routes is certainly on the agenda.
But those are just your anticipations. If there will be another route, we'll just have to wait for tomorrow's announcement by the MMG director. But meanwhile, MMG has flown in international media ahead of the MATA event. So what could be their strategic objectives behind this media engagement, and how might it influence public perception and also future sales? Do you think this increased media attention will actually translate into tangible business gains, or is it more of a PR tactic to offset international or internal challenges?
Yeah, I mean, so again, MATA is a big annual event, so it's not surprising that they have this sale that we were talking about at the beginning of the show, with promotional airfares. It's not surprising that they have this press conference tomorrow where they might likely to announce new routes, and it's not unusual for them to be flying in international media for this event as well. So again, this is something that was probably planned for a while, way before the current crisis kind of emerged. So they didn't know, this was going to happen, with this very kind of timing, just a week or 2 before MATA event, to have this operational crisis and to have to cut capacity by 20%. So, so it's not unusual, but this gives them an opportunity to try to tell their story, which they haven't really been, they've been pretty quiet again the last couple of weeks. So this gives them an opportunity to tell the story to the international media, and to, get the word out, that they're on top of the current issues, and that they're, and what they have planned for the future. That, once they come out of this 3 months of reduced capacity, that they plan to be back, in full swing next year. And as I said on yesterday in the interview, I think they're well positioned for next year. This is very much a short-term issue, so if they're effective with the the strategies and initiatives that they've implemented now, which they should be, they will be in a good footing next year to add back the capacity. So so they want to get the message out that internationally that they're on top of the issue, and that they are going to be back early next year with new routes and full capacity, and also new products as aircraft like the A330-900neo are delivered. So that's for the international media, and then for also Malaysian media, I think there's been a lot of negative publicity, of course, during this last couple of weeks. So hopefully they will try to also, turn some positive stories for the media locally as well, to get the message out to consumers that they have the issue under control, and that they will be back, and that it's safe to book again on Malaysia Airlines. I think that's quite important in the domestic context. In the international context, I think it's more about getting the word out in the overall industry, the overall ecosystem, so that their suppliers and that their passengers overseas also know that they have a good handling of the situation, and are planning to be back in full force. Once this period of capacity cuts is completed.
So besides technical issues, you did mention earlier that this has something to do on political related issues as well. So in your view, are there deep-rooted cultural issues within Malaysia Airlines that could be hindering their ability to fully execute their strategy? And how important is internal culture in turning the company around?
Yeah, so I mean, these cultural issues, have been going on for decades at Malaysia Airlines, and every time there's a restructuring, including the major restructuring 10 years ago, when Malaysia Airlines Group was formed and the company was delisted, they had an attempt to improve the culture and improve manpower efficiency. They reduced headcount and so forth. And it has improved, but it just there's still a lot of deep-rooted issues, and every time there's a crisis, including this last one, they kind of come to surface again. Attrition has been an issue for some time, and there's been a massive kind of exodus of skilled workers, and this is partly because of the environment. There's a lot of demand for these workers from other companies. And while Malaysia Airlines has been increasing salaries, including in the last couple of years, there's still a gap, in terms of salary levels for these skilled workers that are in demand. And there's a lot, and there's still a lot of, I would say, inefficiencies in the airline, manpower inefficiencies, which, as I mentioned in the interview yesterday, also has contributed to the bad on-time performance from last year and from this year. It's not only about maintenance issues or delivery delays or spare part shortages. It's also about the operational staff, on the ground, at KLAA and at the other airports. And unfortunately, I think they've been trying to improve this efficiency, the manpower efficiency levels, and get fix some of these deep-rooted issues, but they never seem to always entirely resolve these issues. It's after so many years, and it's a very challenging, difficult thing for any legacy carrier to do. And maybe they need to have another crack at this to again have a kind of a bit of a reset, and following this incident or following this crisis, and look at some of these issues again, to try to improve it, and to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and also to make the organization, culturally and also at an efficiency level better for the future.
Mm-hmm. Brandon, we've discussed different key areas of this topic, but now we want to look at on the evolution of AMG's strategy. That how has AMG's overall strategy evolved during and since the pandemic, and what key shifts have you noticed in the approach to recovering market share?
Yeah, so I mean, they came out with a new strategy, and I was alluding to this earlier in this interview. it was the new long-term strategy was being worked on in 2019, and they kind of had completed it already. Then the pandemic hit, and then they, once things stabilized, they kind of went back to the strategy, an updated version of the strategy, because they did make several changes during the pandemic, during their restructuring during the pandemic, where they went through the UK court system to renegotiate leases and to get rid of the A380s, which were a big problem in their creating a lot of losses in the pre-pandemic time. So the new strategy, came out, and has now been implemented. And some parts of it have done quite well, I would say, but other parts, I would say, have been a little bit more mixed. And I was mentioning the strategy overall is they really, if you look at what they say in the strategy, they want to be a premium carrier. They don't want to compete, on the budget with the budget carriers like for like, with AirAsia or even Boutique Air Malaysia, which is kind of a hybrid, but more kind of towards the budget end these days. So they want to be a premium carrier, premium network airline, and this is but like I was mentioning before, if you look at some of their commercial strategy recently, I think they've been quite aggressive in terms of fares, aggressive in terms of capacity, aggressive in terms of network expansion. So there's a bit of a misalignment. And the other part of their strategy also is an important part of their strategy is Firefly, which has become a jet operator, relatively recently, and has been expanding into new markets as well. But that necessarily hasn't gone very well, I would say. I mean, they keep on changing the Firefly network, the jet network that they started. It's very hard space to play in, because Firefly is more of a low-cost carrier. It's technically a hybrid carrier, but plays more in that low-fare space. Yep. And it's an extremely competitive segment of the market. And then recently, they've been using the Firefly aircraft to do charters to China, which has been, again, I think created more of an issue because the capacity, because of the capacity constraints and the operational issues that this charter operation to China has had partially impacted their situation they're in today, where they weren't able to keep up the schedules and had an operational crisis. So that was a bit of an unnecessary distraction.
Unfortunately, we don't have that much time.
But overall, I'd say they're well positioned.
I'm so sorry we don't have much time, but of course, indeed, Malaysia Airlines is at a critical juncture where important decisions or changes need to be made, which could significantly affect its future direction. And facing major challenges or opportunities, and the choices it makes now could lead to different outcomes, either success and growth or further difficulties. So I think thank you so much, Brandon Sobey, Independent Aviation Analyst. And that's all for now. I'm Nabila Khalida. Thanks for watching.